the idea with this is that we use our five senses, our sight, our hearing, our touch, our taste, and our smell, to take in information about the world. We all do that. We take in information with our five senses. And we use those five senses to make sense of the world. So we don't just take in what we see, we remember things in pictures, or we remember scenes, or we create scenes of how we'd like things to be in the future. So we imagine things as well. And we do that visually, and we do that, we might replay a conversation that happened yesterday, or we might create a conversation that we want to have tomorrow. So we do that with our sight, our hearing. We remember things that we've touched or feelings. We remember smells and tastes. And we sometimes, you can taste a thing even though it's not present. We can smell something even though it's not there. So we construct within our mind-body system, our world, not just what's happening and coming in, but also processing those things with our senses. And in this exercise, I'm going to be asking you to pay attention to one sense at a time, and to just be noticing what happens when I give you a little prompt. And whatever happens is going to be the right thing to happen. It's whatever happens to you. And then we're going to start playing with that and asking some questions. I will probably only be able to ask questions of people who I can see on the screen, because it's too much of my attention to pay attention on the chat at the same time as I'm looking at you all. So if you want to play along, please put yourself on the screen, and we'll start asking you some questions. So here's the first prompt. See an elephant. See an elephant. Just take a moment to see an elephant. And then, who's got an elephant? Who's got something? Andrew, what kind of elephant have you got?
Oh, I'm unmuted already, sorry. A large grey African elephant with a cub next to his front left foot.
Ah, a large grey African elephant with a cub next to his front left foot. And what kind of cub is that cub?
Oh, I'm not sure cub is the correct term for baby elephant, but yes, fairly newborn baby elephant.
Ah, a newborn baby elephant next to the left foot. And whereabouts are these elephants?
On the African savannah.
In the African savannah. So who's got a different elephant? I think, Marianne, I think I saw your hand go up before. Is that right?
Yeah, mine is rather bluish and not so large, close to a river.
Bluish, not so large, close to a river. And what kind of river is it close to?
A pretty dynamic river, brownish, where there's a lot of work and activity.
Ah, brownish, dynamic river with lots of work and activity. And is there anything else about that bluish elephant that's next to that river?
There are people around who are either taking care or wanting to use the elephant in a way.
No, people who want to use the elephant. So we've got a bluish elephant next to a river. We've got the big elephant with the baby elephant in the African savannah. Who's got a different one? Just take one more.
A picture of a string of elephants that I've seen at the above the Thai restaurant. So it's a kind of a Thai style cartoon elephant and they're in a long line.
Ah, the Thai style cartoon elephant above a restaurant in a long line. And is there anything else about that long line of elephants?
Well, they all look kind of happy and colorful elephants, just walking along in a line.
Oh, happy and colorful. What kind of colors?
Primary colors are green, red, blue, yellow mainly. Kind of triangles, kind of a little bit abstract.
A little bit abstract, red, blue, green and yellow. The string of elephants. So we've got a string of elephants, Thai. We've got the big elephant with the baby elephant in the African savannah, and we've got the Marian's bluish elephant by the river with people, and they might use that elephant. So what are you noticing, everybody now? What are you noticing about these elephants? Andrew.
There are own memories or imaginations.
Their memories or imaginations. What else are you noticing about them?
Different shape, different color.
Different shapes, different colors. Yes, and I see Pam has put everyone has a different elephant. Yes, everyone's got a different elephant, different shapes, different colors. Any other differences you're noticing?
I noticed that when you probe more, the scenery around gets described, and more of the context of the elephant comes out.
So as we probe more, get more context, more scenery around. Anything else that you've noticed? Okay, what about what I'm doing? Anybody notice what I'm up to? What have I been doing? Andrew.
You're accepting any representation of elephant that we provide and are curious as to what that is for us.
So Andrew says, I'm accepting any elephant and I'm curious. So what am I doing or saying, Andrew, that lets you know that I'm accepting and curious?
A number of things. In asking for more detail without challenging, that is a presupposition of acceptance. And also there's a warm, open tone which communicates curiosity.
Okay.
That's, of course, my hallucination.
And a warm tone. I think asking for more detail without something, you said.
So because you don't challenge the initial representation. So because there's no challenge, there's the presupposition of acceptance.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm asking for more detail without challenge. There's a warm tone. Anyone notice anything different? And we've got some answers down here. So reflecting and mirroring. So that's Pam. So what am I doing when I'm reflecting and mirroring? Where's Pam?
You're repeating back the same language that everybody was using.
Repeating back, same language. Okay. And then,
you know, Marian, if I can add, when you asked for the elephant, it was not just the physical, actual elephant I was thinking about. I was also thinking about the elephant in the room. That's an issue that I always have to deal with as well. So
you were thinking about the elephant in the room.
Yeah, it's figurative rather than the actual elephant.
We've got a couple more. We've got Matisa, is that the right way of saying it? Asking, what kind of is it? Yeah, so that is something I'm asking. Let's put it here in the middle here. So what kind of?
There's also creating metaphor.
Yeah, creating metaphor. Put that down there. Okay. And what kind of metaphors am I creating, Mohammed?
You might reflect the walking of elephant compared to ant walking. It's usually in my mind that ant walking and elephant walking is different in management. So it is kind of metaphor for managers to take giant steps or to take a little bit steps. So
Okay.
this is different.
So for Mohammed, it's creating metaphor because it's about steps. And so what am I doing that means that I'm creating metaphors about steps when you interpret that?
You are trying to take our attention that in order to get some clean language, we need to take the right steps to influence the other people so as they can reflect to us again.
Okay. So Mohammed has got that I'm getting you to use clean language to take the right steps. And I can tell you that's not what I'm doing. So let's just find out a little bit more about that, because that's curious when one person is thinking one thing and a different person is thinking something else. So I'm just going to ask Mohammed this evidence question that I was going to bring in later, and I've already brought it in now. So what are you seeing or hearing that's letting you know that that's what I'm up to?
May you repeat it again, please?
Yeah, what are you seeing me do or say that lets you know that that's what I'm up to?
Well, I have read a little bit about clean language before. So it gives me a background. That's what I assume that you are going to do the same thing about clean language.
Okay.
That's it.
Great. So you see, this question is great for just separating out what's going on for somebody. That makes it clear for me that Mohammed's read a bit before, so he knows I'm going to be doing something about metaphor. And so he's interpreting already what I'm doing as creating metaphor, whereas I'm thinking I'm helping people just develop memories or images, as Andrew said. They could well be metaphorical.
No, I thank you for what you are going to. I am here to learn from you and to get your wisdom in this subject. So
well,
it's
your
my
wisdom's very welcome too. So it's great. Okay, so visual metaphors. Yeah, so these might be a bit metaphorical, and we'll come on to metaphors in a bit. Let's just stay with these. I just think of them as perceptions right now. Just I say a word and that perception comes in your mind, and it may or may not be metaphor, because the idea of a metaphor is a very big one, and it's quite graded in terms of whether a metaphor we usually think of as one thing standing for something else, and if it's just a perception, it's not really standing for anything. It's just how it is, and it's just a way of getting into these clean questions. So I'm going to do a little bit more. I'm going to find out about 3 more elephants, and the rest of you are going to pay attention to the elephants, what differences you can notice between them, and pay attention a bit more to what I'm doing. See if you can pick up any more questions or any more things that you notice I'm doing. And gradually we'll build a little crib sheet for you to start having a go in a minute. So who's got a different elephant?
I have an elephant.
Who said that? I missed.
Pam.
Pam. Hi, Pam.
Hi.
What kind of elephant have you got?
My elephant is a tattoo. I have a tattoo of an elephant, and it's on my arm.
A tattoo of an elephant on your arm. Ah. Anything else about that tattoo of an elephant?
I got it when I got married. My husband and I both got tattoos of elephants.
So tattoos when you got married on your arm. And whereabouts on your arm?
It's sort of at the top of my arm, on my left arm.
And what kind of elephant is it?
My one is a Thai elephant, and it's got some flowers around it. And it reminds me of Thailand because we got married in Thailand.
Right. A Thai elephant on the top of her arm with flowers around. And who's got a different elephant?
My husband is a very boring plain elephant.
He's got a boring plain one, and she's got the one with the flowers. Who's got a different elephant? Virginie?
Virginie, yeah. I was just picturing a kind of a teddy bear elephant because I saw a marvelous one at one store that I thought was super nice for my children, you know. So that was the kind of elephant I was picturing.
You were picturing a teddy bear elephant that you'd seen that might be nice for your children. And is there anything else about that teddy bear elephant?
It's quite big and it's very soft, very soft.
Big
that you want to cuddle.
Mm-hmm. And anything else about it?
It's blue.
Blue. It's big and soft and blue, and it's a teddy bear elephant that might be good for your children.
Yes.
And who's got a different one again? We've got the tattoo, we've got the teddy bear elephant. Different one. Just take one more. One more elephant.
Okay, let me try. Asthma.
Great. What kind of elephant have you got?
My last encounter with an elephant was in a circus. The elephant in the circus. So
an elephant in a circus?
Yeah.
Oh, what kind of elephant is that?
I suppose it's a circus elephant. It's a dancing elephant.
Ah, dancing elephant. And whereabouts is it dancing?
In the ring, circus ring.
Uh-huh. So a circus elephant, a dancing circus elephant dancing in the ring, a tattoo elephant with flowers around from the wedding on the top of Pam's arm, and Virginie's got a teddy bear elephant that's blue and big and soft. So, what are you noticing about those elephants? And in particular, the differences between them.
It represents a reality of someone because it's really close to an experience.
Sorry, I somehow can't hear you unless I can see who's speaking, and I missed it.
I was saying it's very a personal elephant. It's really linked to the experience of someone, or a large representation of the elephant.
Yeah, so it's personal and related to the representation is related to the personal. Is there anything different you noticed about these elephants? We've got a teddy bear, we've got a tattoo. We've got the ones from before. We've got the African one. We've got with the baby elephant. And who can remember Marianne's elephant? What did Marianne have? That was a
The
little while ago.
bluish elephant. Then we also had a string of elephants.
Yeah, so we've got the string of elephants. We've got the bluish elephant by the river. So anything else you're noticing about all these elephants? Or maybe not. Maybe we've mined that as much as we can. Okay, what about what I'm doing? Anybody notice anything new that we can put up on this board about what I'm doing?
Each time you're paraphrasing what the person tells you.
Uh-huh. Paraphrasing, okay.
You are asking anything else over and over again.
Yeah, I'm asking anything else. Or is there? What is there? Anything else? No. Okay. So I'm going to do one more little piece, and then in a little while, I'm going to be asking you to ask one another these questions. So, so far we've got what kind of, and is there anything else about? So I might ask one or two slightly different ones this time. So keep your ears open for different questions, and then we're going to be having a little go. So let's have a different sense, and we'll just start again with a different one so that you can start. Those of you who've already had a go can join in again, or if you haven't had a go, you can join in from scratch. So let's have hear an alarm. Hear an alarm. Who's got an alarm?
I think of my own clock alarm, which goes off just before
Your own?
7 in the morning.
Uh-huh. I think of my own clock alarm that goes off just before 7 in the morning. And when you think about it, whereabouts do you think about it?
In my bed.
Your bed. And what kind of clock alarm is it?
My alarm clock to ensure that I'm out of bed by 7.
Say it again, Karanjit.
My alarm clock to ensure I'm out of bed by 7 in the morning.
So it's her alarm clock. She hears it in bed, makes sure she gets out by 7. Who's got a different thing happen when I say hear an alarm?
So I can say something about this. I have a body clock alarm. I'm not used to the alarms ringing, and I don't remember last when I've woken up with an alarm. My body alarm, and I always wake up with that.
So Pooja has a body clock alarm. So whereabouts is that body clock alarm?
I think just before I'm supposed to wake up, and when I check the normal time, it's like almost matches the same time, you know.
So just before I wake up, or just before I'm due to wake up, I look at the clock and it matches the time.
Yes.
And is there anything else about that body clock alarm?
I'm quite happy I don't have to depend on the alarm clocks ringing.
Quite happy not to have the alarm clocks. Sounds great. And who's got a different alarm? When I say hear an alarm, what happens? Virginie.
I'm thinking about protective alarm, house alarm, something very different. And I don't feel comfortable.
The protective alarm, a house alarm, and I don't feel comfortable. And is there anything else about that alarm?
It makes a lot of noise. It's annoying. And at the same time, it's good that it's there.
It makes a lot of noise, annoying, and it's good that it's there. And whereabouts is it?
In the house.
In the house. Whereabouts in the house?
In different places, 3 places.
In 3 different places in the house. And it's an alarm that's annoying and good that it's there.
Yes.
Okay. So what are you noticing about these alarms? So we've got the house alarm, the body clock alarm, and the waking up at 7 o'clock alarm from Karanjit. Who's got anything that they've noticed about these alarms?
Well, may I speak?
For sure.
For me, you are very good at extracting information from the persons about alarms by using what?
They're very good at extracting information about alarms. And in fact, actually with clean language, which is what these questions are, you can be very good at extracting information about anything.
I am enjoying what you are saying because you are using what, where, and how. You let the other person on the other side feel comfortable in talking with you.
So what am I doing? What do you think I'm doing that mean they feel comfortable?
You are giving them the space to talk, feel safe and talk, because you establish trust in the beginning.
Yeah, I'm giving space to talk. Okay. So, and anyone notice a different question that I asked that's not on the board yet?
Whereabouts?
Yes, we have whereabouts. And with whereabouts, you can ask where or whereabouts. And these 4 questions, 3 or 4, depending if you count those as different, those questions form a massive part of clean language. So with very few questions, I can do a lot of work because I've just developed all those perceptions. That's 6 elephants and 3 alarms with 3 or 4 questions. And as Mohammed says, I'm extracting a lot of information with very few questions.
My curiosity that's burning me here is, how is clean language different from the neurolinguistic programming meta model or Chomsky's surface and deep language? The questions seem the same. How specifically, when specifically, where specifically, against what criteria? They seem incredibly similar. Is there a distinction that I should be seeing?
There is a distinction, because those 4 questions that you've just reeled off there, so how specifically, when specifically, what specifically, and against what criteria, are not part of clean language. We don't say specifically, we don't have a when question, and we don't say against what criteria, because that brings, so the main thing is we are avoiding bringing in any of our own words as far as that is humanly possible. And so these questions have been really pared down, really to the bare minimum, to allow for maximum choice from the other person to speak. So we don't say specifically, because that would be our desire to have it specifically. So we allow the person to answer in whatever way they want to. So it's got a lot of similarities with the meta model and the Chomsky's deep structure, and it certainly gets to the same kind of information, but it does so without putting any or as a minimal interpretation on what the person has said.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. So since you say that the destination is very similar, then what is the intention of, and I think I know the answer to the question, but I'd love for you to share that. What is the intention, therefore, of paring it down and refusing or avoiding any specificity?
Okay, so what do you think I'm going to say?
Well, I think that, considering that, Chomsky is, is looking at, and NLP is perhaps looking at map, not territory. I think the danger of the specificity is mind reading some of your own specifics, and that you may uncover information that you would otherwise miss if you were going for specificity.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the same. It's about giving the client, if we talk about it in a context of coaching, the maximum possible choice in answering the question. And we do have questions, because clean language is a scale. So you've got questions like what kind of and anything else, which are at one end of a clean scale, if you like. They are the cleanest questions that we know, because they go right adjacent to what the person's just said, and they assume hardly anything. But we do have a question that we ask sometimes, which says, does that have a size or a shape? So there is a little bit of leading there. And nobody is ever suggesting that you have to stay right at the end of the scale the whole time. And so, but it's kind of, when we teach people clean, we do teach them to stay at the end of the scale the whole time, so that they can then discern when they're being clean and being less clean.
Okay, so I appreciate you pushing the awareness at this point. I guess I'm just playing it forwards in my mind, because at some point you want to find, so using Korzybski's language, the boundary of the map that they've created. So, if you just keep giving choice, eventually some of those choices aren't tenable, aren't functional, and don't serve the client in any way, shape, or form. So, is the intention for them to completely, in coaching methodology, come to their own realization, or is there a language to challenge their representation in some way, shape, or form?
These are such great questions. Can I just check before I carry on? Because I can see that, I can't say your name, Karu has got a question, and Virginie, and lots of other people. So I'm just going to check what kind of questions you've got, Karu, and I'll come back to you, Andrew, in a moment.
I have
Thank you.
similar to Andrew question. I have few questions. One is what Andrew just asked. My second question is, you used when just now. Do you have a reason behind it? Because you did use when. You think about it, where is it about?
Yeah, so I do use when, but in a different context. That's great observation. What I'm going to do is just put these questions up so that we can answer them and not lose them. So we've got a question about the when. We've got a question about challenging.
I have the same question that with Andrew just now, challenging their maps. The third one is, do clean language have similarity with lazy Jedi questions?
With what questions?
Lazy Jedi questions.
Lazy Jedi questions that come from Judy Rees.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they're the same.
All right.
They're the same. That's her name for them. Yeah.
All right. That's my question too.
Lovely.
At the moment.
Virginie, let's have yours.
Yeah, I understand the point of being clean so that there is no interpretation, and you really open the opportunities and you open actually the field so that the person can say anything. At the same time, I feel if the question were a bit, I find it a bit awkward and cold. I lack empathy with those questions, and I wonder, or is it then in coaching? While I'm coaching, I'm very empathic with the person, and probably I lead too much, and I don't give that space of really going in all direction. But I find that a little bit intimidating when you just say, and what else? Because it's very cold.
Yeah, so it's very cold for Virginie. Whereas someone else described it earlier as warm. So there's a difference in perception there. Yeah. So let's, is it okay with everyone else if I go to these questions now? Is that all right? Just give me a little thumbs up if that's okay. Great, okay. So let's just talk about the when question. So obviously, when you're coaching, I'm going to just move on to a little bit of coaching now. When you're coaching, you will bring in a when question, because you will ask questions like, so when will you do this activity? When can you do that by? So we're not taking away the when question from you as a coach. And if I'm so I'm going to make a distinction between coaching and modeling. So the main activity that those of us who do clean do is what we call modeling, which is helping, and so the activity we're doing is helping people to uncover, a bit like Andrew said, their deep structure, their model of the world, or you might call it their hidden architecture. So what's going on sort of underneath the surface. And we usually do that using metaphors. So somebody might say, well, I'd like to create the next 3 steps on my path. So when they say that, that's a metaphor. And rather than immediately go to what are those steps going to be, the concrete steps, we would start asking questions to help them make a little model of the actual path. So we would go, oh, what kind of path is it? How many steps are there altogether? What kind of steps are they? Where is the path? We would help them construct their metaphor for the path itself, rather than just going, oh, that's a figure of speech and moving past it. We would go into that and help them to create a little mental model of their own perception of that path. And so sometimes when we're coaching, we're doing that. We're helping them to make models, because the metaphors themselves hold masses and masses of information that in a very sort of small parcel, as it were. So we can kind of go into that and get lots of information from a very few number of questions about how they're thinking about that path and those steps. And then later on, maybe in the session, we might say, and when there's a step, when the first step is white and gold and you're a little bit frightened to tread on it, is there anything else about that white gold step? And they go, oh yeah, well, if it was just a little bit lower, then then it would be okay. It's a little bit high. And we might then say, so what would need to happen for it to be lower? And they then might take the step, and then we might say, and so when can you take that step? We would correspond it to real life. And when we do that and we come back into real life, we're sort of back into more traditional coaching. So in coaching, we kind of mix up a bit of modeling and some more traditional type coaching questions. The way I was using when just now was like a placeholder. So it's going, hold on to that perception that you've just told me about. And when that is true, now tell me something extra about it. So when there's a river, what kind of river is it? So it puts the word or the phrase or the metaphor into the person's attention so that they know where you're going with your question. So it's like you're flagging up and saying, so when I've got this pen, everybody look at the pen, what kind of pen is it? So it's putting the attention on the pen before you ask the question. That's the when. So it kind of goes, and when, word, what kind of thing is it? So it makes it a little sentence. So you put, and when, what kind of. And we use that a lot to just kind of train people's attention to what we are going to ask them about. Okay. So whose question was that? That was Karu's. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. So then looking at challenging, we have an interesting way of challenging people when we're doing modeling, and it's to pay exquisite attention to that model and follow the logic of their model and pick out from that logic what is salient to them, what we think is important to them. And so although we've only got these few questions, they're infinitely variable and customizable because we're choosing some aspect of what they have said. And if we kind of notice a little incongruity or a pattern coming up, we can challenge it by replaying their words back to them and then asking the question. So for example, if somebody says, well, maybe I'll put my foot on that step. Maybe I'll pick up some information when I go to that conference. Maybe I'll do this and maybe I'll do the other. Because we're tuned in to the language, we will hear these maybes or these somehows or little words like that. And then we can say, so when maybe you go to the conference, you'll pick up some information, and when maybe you'll put your foot on that step, and when maybe something else, is there anything else about that maybe? So we use the questions to do the challenging, but it's to do with what we put in the attention before the challenge so that they know. And one of the great things about it is because the person knows that they said that, it challenges quite deeply because it's like, oh yeah, that is what I said. I did say maybe all those times. And they start then themselves wondering what that maybe is about. So it's a lot of the clean language is really, it's about the way you navigate the session and how you choose what to ask about. And so it's not just a free range of questions and sort of word association. It's helping this person to create a model of how they are being in the world and what they would like to have happen in the world. So if I give you an example, let's give you an example of a session. So here's one. These metaphors, they have a bit of a half-life and they're not so easy to remember, but I'll do my best. I've got a little recording of a session where I'm asking the person to start with, the starting question for clean is, what would you like to have happen? So I asked her what she would like to have happen, and she says she'd like to use her talents, something that, I can't remember her exact word, but something like wisely, use talents wisely. So I asked a question about the talents, and she knew a lot about her talents and her skills already. So I thought, well, let's find out about the wisely. And it turned out the metaphor she had was that she could go up a hill and she would be sort of almost flying up the hill with these flames on her heels, just flying up the hill really fast and getting to the top. And then she could see this house across the valley. And that house was part of a whole town. And there were some problems with the house. So one of the problems was everything in the house was too big. So there's a great big door handle and all kinds of big things that didn't work. So she couldn't get her hand around the door handle. So currently what I'm thinking in the back of my mind, it sounds like this is currently unachievable because of the big handles, but I don't interpret or anything. I just continue. And after a little while, she says, oh, it's about saying yes to some things and no to some other things. So this is now the crux of the matter, but she's discovered that herself through exploring the fact that she's got these big handles in this room, and somehow this information comes out. So then I go to the yes and the no and use clean questions to develop the yes and the no. And even with that, she was practicing. She's like, no, no. And I'm going, so I then repeat, no, no. Is there anything else about that? No, no. It's like, oh no, it needs to be more of a no. And so just by repeating and asking her, she's finding out what kind of no she needs to have and then what kind of yes. And then at the end of the session, I ask her what's happening about the house now. And she says, oh, it's just in front of me. It's like 20 paces in front and I can just walk in and open the front door. And so back in the metaphor, she now goes in the house, and this reminds her of something that happened when she was a child, and there's bread baking. And it's now that she is now thinking and knowing how she can use those talents. And then after we've done that kind of modeling piece, then we're back in more normal coaching and saying, okay, so what needs to happen now that you know this? What difference is it going to make? What needs to happen? What steps you're going to take and all that kind of thing. So it's kind of using the metaphor to do the work with clean questions. So Andrew, I see you've got your hand up again, but have I sort of answered the question before?
Yeah, you have, and I'm sorry if I'm disrupting your flow. Forgive me.
That's okay. Absolutely fine.
Curiosity is my is my narrative and my inner map, right? So yeah, I'll let you proceed. You sort of answered the question right at the end, in the sense that you do come out. You phrased it as return to normal coaching, yes. So that you spend time with clean language in the metaphor, allowing for discovery.
Yes.
But at some point there is an exit from this. I mean, you said follow the client's logic. I always call it psychological because because there's no logic in those maps. No, it's psychological. No. But anyway, so at some point, so my question for you is so I'm wondering what lets you know that you can come out to normal coaching.
Well, a couple of things. One is, generally, it depends. The main thing is the length of the session. So if you've got an hour and you've explored, you've done a contracting and then you do some modeling, you probably would leave a good 10 to 15 minutes to explore what the actions are going to be, what they've learned, and all those kind of things from the session. If you've got longer, then what I find is if you can do a longer piece of modeling, and I work with my clients for an hour and a half, then actually quite a lot of the work of the end is already done for you by the fact that things shift and change in the metaphor. And so there's less to do at the end because the person's like, okay, I know what to do now. They don't really need that so much. So then it's a bit of more of a formality. So, so it partly depends on time and partly depends on, is something happening and shifting in this landscape, or is it kind of stuck? And if it's stuck, then as with any other methodology that you would use, if it's not working, do something different, and perhaps come back to more normal coaching earlier.
Thank you. My questions have been answered. I've lowered my hand.
So Lazy Jedi, I'll just say that again, is one of the clean trainers, just her word for these 4 questions that I put up, the anything else, the what kind of, where and whereabouts. So I think that's right. Is that Jack? Because I've not heard her actually say that.
Yeah, that's right. So I private messaged Cairo just now. It's just Judy Reese is also a colleague in the clean field, and it's just her way of branding clean language when she was marketing it.
Yeah. So she calls them the Lazy Jedi questions because they are a little bit lazy because there's only 4 of them and you can do so much work. So that you can see that the work is not in the questions themselves, it is in helping the person to, you know, figure out what model they've got in their metaphor landscape. So, and to ask questions that are relevant to them and the work. And then coming on to the empathy, that's an interesting one, Virginie, because it's feedback that we get quite a lot. And another word that people use to describe these questions is that they're clunky. You know, and that's quite often when they're watching people do clean language. It's like, come on, you're just asking all these kind of clunky old questions, the same old question again and again. But I have to tell you that the majority of people, when they are in the session, being the client, and someone is paying this kind of attention to their, what Andrew calls psychological stuff, when that happens, it has a feeling of being completely listened to and having your logic affirmed. And it's like being bathed in your own language, and it's wonderful. But I do know that it doesn't seem like that from the outside. And so my main recommendation is to get yourself a clean coach and experience it first before you kind of think, oh yeah, I'm going to dismiss it, or in fact before you use it, because I think if you have an experience of being coached, it's very different than how you imagine it might be. I'm going to take one more question, then I'm going to get back on track. Cairo.
Thank you so much, Marian. Sorry, again, I am disturbing your session. I just wondering, when you do clean language or a coaching session, right? And when the other person suddenly starts talking and can't stop, like the current activity that we do today, everyone just take out that 1 or 2 statement. What if someone just tell a whole lot of story, and how do you want to model that, and which part of it do you want to use clean language?
Great question. And I'm going to just take a little bit to answer it. So let's imagine that happens right at the beginning of the session, which is often where people like to tell a story. So you say, what would you like to have happen? And they talk and they talk and they talk. We have a model that we use. I'm going to put this one up, even though it wasn't on the agenda. We have a model to figure out what's the difference, to kind of separate it out. Because a lot of this work is about separating. It's about separating out things into categories and going, okay, we've got a metaphor there, or we've got some inference, and so we're going to ask, what did you see or hear? So that kind of thing. And one of the ways we separate things out, particularly at the start of a session, is we separate out into, hang on, get my pens ready, into problems, remedies, and outcomes, like the traffic lights. This is. So we're listening out, and we're as someone is speaking, I'm separating out what they're saying into those 3 categories. And actually, probably more like only 2 categories, because if there are some outcomes present in what they're saying, then I will pull those out of all of the talk that they've said. So if they go problem, 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 outcome, problem, 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 outcome, problem, problem, I'm like, okay, there were 2 outcomes in there. So I repeat back a little bit, just a little bit of the problems, and then I would confirm the outcomes with them. So I'd say, and there's problem 1 and there's problem 2 and problem 3, just a little bit of each one. And what you'd like is more confidence to deal with so-and-so, and you'd like to be better at listening to your employees or something. So I pull out the things, and I pay more attention to the things that they say they want. And that gives me a way of kind of reducing the amount of information. It's not that I am never going to pay attention to the problems, but it's like, let's just listen with that ear of problem, remedy, outcome. A remedy is when somebody says, I'd like less of something. So I'd like to be less aggressive, or I'd like to stop procrastinating. They sounded to be kind of stopping a problem. So I categorize them more with the problem, and I'm picking out the outcomes when people want more of something, or they want to have something that they don't have yet. And I've prioritized those for a little while in the session. But I might, if I really need to stop someone from talking because they're talking, I might just say, let me just pause you there and let me repeat back. And I would make overt what I'm doing, which is repeating back. And then they can hear what they're saying, and we can pick things out to put attention on. So we have kind of strategies for that kind of thing. And I would tend not to interrupt. My tendency is to let people talk and start modeling what bits I think might be useful for them. Or to summarize the whole lot and say, so when there's all of that, what would you like to have happen in this session? Things like that, to narrow things down a little bit. Okay, so I'm noticing the time is getting on and we're talking away. So let's just move on and start thinking about this. We've already talked about it quite a bit in a coaching context. And so a coaching sort of very simple way of getting started. What would you like to have happen? Listen for an outcome. If there isn't one, then you might say, what would you like to have happen in this session? And then pick out a word or 2 and start asking questions to do what somebody said earlier, to create a bit of context around some detail and what Mohammed called extracting information. But you're not extracting information for you as the coach, you're helping that person to build models of their own perceptions so that will be useful for them. So it's like, out of all the things that they've said, what's the most salient, what's the most interesting for them as far as you can tell? And that might be that they've emphasized something, they've repeated something, or whatever. And then those of you who are involved in supervision, and in fact, if you're coaching and the topic is a relational topic. So if the person is talking about their relationship with their boss, or the relationship with their spouse or their partner, or a team, and that could be, they're talking about that as a client of coaching, or if you're doing supervision, and now naturally, of course, it's about the relationship between the coach and the client that they're talking about, then then this model that I put up earlier, I'll just put it at the bottom of here, that we use to help people separate out. Again, it's like categorizing or coding and separating. So this one is evidence, inference, and impact. So if somebody's comes to you for supervision or for a sort of less of a sort of inner dialogue with themselves, but a question in coaching that's about relationships, then they will quite often tell you what's happening from their point of view. Well, of course, they will tell you what's happening from their point of view. And quite a bit of what we think about other people is what we have made up about them, what we're inferring about what's going on. So a lot of things can happen in a coaching or supervision session that are inferences, like you know, that person has never liked me, or you know, stuff like that. Think of another one. Yeah, I need. Well, even if it's not relational, somebody says, I need to sustain my energy. Even if it's just personal like that, I need to sustain my energy. Or if we're in supervision and the person says, oh, I just don't think we hit it off. So you've got these kind of metaphors or inferences that people use to describe what's going on for them. And one of the things to do is to see if you can get to what's the evidence for this, separating it out into inference and then taking the evidence. So a question that we have, which is not one of David Grove's original questions, but was created by my business partner, Caitlin Walker, who does a lot of work also with Jack, with teams and groups. And she has this question, what will you see or hear? Or what did you see or hear? Or what did they say or do? So you can either ask it, you know, what did you or they say or do? Or what did you see or hear? And so that those questions, as well as what kind of and anything else, they can help you to get to the sort of what's actually going on in real life, away from the metaphor or the inference. And then we also talk about the impact